One more week left in the regular season, but we're going to keep going right into it. This BCP Podcast. My man Derek, Matt, we're all here. Big week. We've got some fancy scores going on and some things that are kind of like, hey, how did that happen? So, first on the docket, Manatee and Palmetto in a tight one with the Cross River rivalry. Manatee 38, Palmetto 33. I was supremely surprised seeing that score, especially knowing how that rivalry is and how Manatee has kind of dominated that rivalry over the years past. Did not think that Manatee would keep it that close, but at the end of the game, I guess the better team won, if you would like. But a fantastic finish. Thoughts on that score when you saw it come across your screen Friday night?
It keeps the rivalry going, man. Palmetto is a really good team. Manatee got the win. It just gives us fans another game to look forward to next year when they play each other again.
I'd reiterate that. I mean, it's just always a big time matchup right across the bridge right there, and it sets the stage for next year. I agree with Matt, so we'll see. But yeah,
I was thinking Palmetto was going to get the win, but
either way, you knew that game. I mean, it just had to have been a close game. Whoever was going to take it, it was just kind of setting up for that, and that's exactly what happened. So, yep.
Lake Wales undefeated. Auburndale was a one-loss team. Lake Wales 42-7 over Auburndale, and that shuts up all the mouths of the haters who have been criticizing Lake Wales all season long. Their schedule is soft. A, B, C, and D. That's the only reason why they're a top team, because they got a soft schedule. Well, Auburndale was a one-loss team, and they beat them by 35 points. I did not see it coming at all. Congratulations, I guess, to Lake Wales. Auburndale they'll pick themselves up by the boots, but that is a massive win over in Polk County.
Yeah, no doubt. And did this team win a state championship last year?
Last season, Lake Wales won a state championship last year.
Right. So yeah, I think they're they're able to have a tough schedule and get through. So they're going to be fine in the playoffs. They've got some big time talent, obviously. So yeah, that's cream of the crop in Polk County right now is Lake Wales, no doubt.
Zephyr Hills and Cypress Creek, undefeated. Surprisingly, Cypress Creek goes into this game, right? Everybody forgot about them. The Coyotes, brand new school, maybe a handful of years old. They come in this game against Zephyr Hills, who's one of the older schools in Pasco County, and Zephyr Hills lays down the law, giving the Hoosier Daddy of Pasco County 63-35 to wipe out Cypress Creek's undefeated season. Did either one of you expect that type of scoring, and did you expect Cypress Creek to win?
Cypress Creek is having a really good season. But Zephyr Hills is a great, strong team, and when you get these great teams playing against each other, it really is any given Friday. It's hard to tell which team's going to win or not. And, we make these predictions a lot of times, and we're a lot of times wrong. I mean, it can go 50-50. But Zephyr Hills, man, they put the work in. They actually look like a really strong team. If you look at their schedule, they've had I think they've had a pretty tough schedule. They're 7-2, and they were prepared, man. They came in and they did their homework against Cypress Creek, and it looks like their defense really stopped that offense. And we talked in a couple podcasts ago about Cypress Creek's quarterback and the work that he was putting in, and so usually when the quarterback doesn't score a lot, it's usually that defensive line just in his face all night long. We didn't get to see film on this game, but I'm sure if we went back and looked, that was probably the case. A lot of pressure on the QB, wasn't really able to make these plays, whereas Zephyr Hills just capitalized and just ran the scoreboard up.
Bro, let me hit this. Let me hit you with this. Zephyr Hills, 2 running backs over 100 yards. Tristan Lennon, 226 yards rushing on 12 carries, and then Rodney Smith, 15 carries, 115 yards. As a team, they averaged 11, almost 12 yards per carry. And then Brendan Colella, the quarterback, almost threw for 200 yards and 2 TDs. So offensively, obviously the score shows that they were rolling, but it looks like just off the numbers is that the running game was really the difference, that the Coyotes had no answer on the ground for Zephyr Hills' running attack. And lastly, Derek's reaction when he saw this on the script was what? Lando Lakes beats Wiregrass, and we're staying in Pasco County. Lando Lakes beats Wiregrass 37-35. Now we know Wiregrass having a fantastic season. Luke Knight just set some crazy massive record. He's tearing it up. However, Luke lost his cape. The Superman must have lost his cape as Lando Lakes beats Wiregrass 37-35. Please react to that one.
Yeah, and congrats to Luke Knight. He's the first QB in uh, the county history to throw over 3,000 yards. Luke Knight is really making a statement for himself for his high school career. But man, I wish, you can't win them all, I guess you could say. It wasn't a district game or anything, so it doesn't really matter to them. Wiregrass is going to go ahead and win the district. And, shout out to both teams. It was a great game.
What was Land O'Lakes' record on the year? I don't even know.
Land O'Lakes currently is 4-5. All right, so they were 3-5 going into that ball game versus Wiregrass Ranch. Wiregrass Ranch currently sits at 7-2. They won their district at 3-1, but no one expected Land O'Lakes to be able to upset Wiregrass in that game. And I'm just looking at these numbers. And Land O'Lakes quarterback Kyle Horvath, 13 of 20 for 285 yards. He completed almost 66% of his passes, exactly 65% of his passes with a 147 QBR, 3 passing TDs. That's massive. That is massive. And I mean, Luke went for 400 yards and 4 TDs and 1 interception. There you go again. But you can't. They're throwing the ball all over the yard the other night. I guess the ball was just flying everywhere.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, Kyle Horvath is actually a really good quarterback. I forgot that he's actually at Land O'Lakes, but yeah, Kyle is a really good athlete. I think Coach Bennett coached him up a little bit too, Preston. And but yeah, Kyle's an excellent quarterback, athletic, got some height on him, and can run. He's got that speed to him. But yeah, Kyle's a really good quarterback. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And Kyle's pushing. Yeah, Kyle's had a pretty good career, and but yeah, that's no doubt. I'd be interested to see that game. I haven't looked at a lot of film locally this week. Been a lot in Miami-Dade right now. But yeah, I look forward to tapping into some of this game film to see what's going on. But yeah, that score did jump off as a little bit surprising right there. But good
outside of the definitive score, which is obviously the most important number in that game. Matt, let me hit you with this. Wiregrass could only produce 39 net rushing yards on 18 attempts, while Lando Lakes, 38 attempts, 129 yards as a team, and Cody Gwynn, senior running back for Lando Lakes, 27 carries with 100 yards and 2 TDs. So just offensively, Lando Lakes, the way at least they had they ran the ball better than Wiregrass, and that could have been the difference in the ball game. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Balance is everything. Throwing is great, but man, that running game, you get that going, and it's very hard to stop sometimes, and especially when you have a mixture, because the defense, it becomes a tool for yourself as the QB, because the defense doesn't know if you're throwing it or you're going to run it, and so it keeps them on their toes. So you do got to mix it up a little bit once the other team starts kind of locking your game down a little bit. And they see, okay, they're just going to be throwing all night. It gives the defense time to adjust to try to shut that down a little bit. And then so that's to me, that's what it sounds like. It was a little bit more balanced with Atlanta Lakes. They got that running game going, and they ended up getting the win for that. So. That's what's great about high school football. These teams, there's a lot of great teams out here, and they might have a lower score, like they haven't won as many games. Sometimes on paper, they don't look like they're going to be as strong, but there's some top players out here that when they get their opportunity to run the ball or they get the pass, they really they shine, and it's hard to say like which team's going to win based off looking at their records and stuff like that. But when we pick it apart, like you said, I think that was the game changer, was the balance of having the running game for Atlanta Lakes.
All right, so it's week 11, the last week of the season, and some teams have kind of come out of nowhere. Some teams have been dominating, but there have been some intriguing teams that probably had different roads. And I want to kind of hit on right now the most intriguing team of the season for you. And Matt, let me start with you. Just go on, give me your team name and tell me why they've been so intriguing to you over the season.
Absolutely, and I've been following a couple teams, but I'd say the one that stood out the most, that is most intriguing, is Sumner. And the reason why is because pretty much every single game that they played, they have blown the other team out of the water. From 40, they just beat Newsom 49-8. We saw the big win against Wharton 40-14. They beat Gaither 46-28. You know, Gaither was really strong. They had a tough schedule, but man, this Sumner team is just looking really, really good. I'm excited to see Greg Smith. It's his senior year. Really see how far he can take his team through the playoffs. Last year they were cut short. Plant ended up beating them. So I'm actually excited to see, because based off their schedule, and I know we talked about how the schedule doesn't necessarily mean everything, but the way they're beating these teams and the way they're scoring, and essentially to win a football game against these really good teams, you're going to have to put some numbers on the board. And it seems like they've learned how to put numbers on the board at a high level. So Sumner, that's what I'm gonna go with. I'm excited to watch them rally through playoffs, and I hope they can make it pretty far.
I'm gonna use I'm gonna use a quote by Derek Williams. They have no weakness. Like it's tough to say, yeah, you can expose them here, you can expose them there. But what Sumner's been doing is kind of it feels like they are making it their mission to let folks know that they're possibly the best team in the county. And obviously they can't play the better teams in the county. So the next best thing is to smash anybody in their way. And they run the ball well. They throw the ball well. They have one of the most dominant players in the area behind center. Defensively, they can shut teams out who are very good offensively. So Sumner, I like that one. Derek, I'm going to punt to you. What about your most intriguing team?
I like what Jesuit has had to face this year. We've talked about them, but just, for them to open up in the kickoff classic, get thumped with Jones, and, then they lose 2 out of their first 3 against some big time opponents, but really took it on the chin against Columbus and Treasure Coast. And the way they've been able to bounce back against an Armwood, Bishop, Gaither, Tech, and then Hillsborough this past Friday night. And then they close the season against their private school rival in Tampa Catholic. I really find that just a really intriguing story. And so I like what they've done. I like what Sumner's done, obviously, in Armwood. There's a lot of good stories in the area, but I really do find that Jesuit story this year. After the Columbus game, you come back home and you kind of, you almost start doubting yourself. And then all of a sudden you put together a nice win streak. But I mean, to think about that, they started with 2 losses out of 3 after losing the kickoff classic. And then you've got to step up against Armwood, and what a defining moment in the season to have to play them and win, and then turn right around a week later and go up against the Bishop Verot, and then close the season against the Gaither and the Techs of the world. That's a pretty good storyline that I think is going to build a lot of character heading into the playoffs. So that's one of many.
I'm that's another one. So you and Matt are on your game today. It is, man. It's super intriguing. And you look at Jesuit from the start of the season, and everybody kind of said the same thing. They're not the Jesuit of old. They don't have the talent. They don't look like the Jesuit they were accustomed to. And then they start getting guys healthy. The offensive line starts to gel. The young quarterback starts to eliminate young mistakes. They start to fill guys in certain roles, and they start to understand their roles as the season progresses. And then they start pulling out hard victories. And I think that's a sign of a really good team, is that when you get up in the Gaither and you got to win in overtime, you do. You get up against a Bishop Verot and you win late in the game, and you do. And then you come back and you strategize versus Tech and you win that game in a close one. And you beat Armwood early in the season in a close one. Like, they're finding ways to win, right? And that's what makes them intriguing, that they could possibly find ways to pull out games in the postseason they're probably not supposed to win. I'm gonna vote I'm going across the bridge on y'all. Y'all stayed in Hillsborough County. I'm going across the bridge with Calvary. 7-2. They don't get the credit they deserve. They only lost to Newberry and Wildwood. They lost to Newberry and Carrollwood Day. Carrollwood Day is talented as they come. However, a 7-2 team that has beaten Trinity Catholic, Clearwater, Lakeland Christian, and Berkeley Prep. And they're tucked away under the shadow of CCC, and we've also discussed them in the same light with Largo, and they're tucked out behind the East Lake. However, the Calvary Christian team is a lot better than people recognize, and I think they don't get the love because maybe they're a small private school, but they got some dudes doing some good stuff. And I'm just going to read off a few numbers. The senior quarterback, Drakett, almost 2,000 yards passing, just 4 INTs and 26 touchdown passes. They got the Sean Cuomo kid who's not having the monster season like he used to, but he's at almost 700 yards rushing. As a team, they're 1,300 yards rushing, 17 rushing TDs. So they're doing some things offensively, and they're intriguing because they kind of like Jesuit. They lost early in the season against some tough opponents, but then after that, they started rolling. They started rolling on dudes. So my vote is going to Calvary Christian. All right. We keep saying the theme is heading into the playoffs. We keep heading into the playoffs. This is the last week of regular season. However, once we get past that, guys are going to have to make a run in the playoffs. So this segment, we're going to discuss individual players who we think could have a big impact in the postseason. And since I already know the guys that we're going to talk about, I'm going to start with Derek. D, give me your dude who you think is going to have a very impactful postseason.
Well, I'm gonna go outside the box, stay away from the skill kids that I know y'all like. I'm gonna go lineman, and I'm gonna go with the intriguing story that we just talked about with Tampa Jesuit. I'm gonna keep an eye on Gavin Blanchard, right tackle, offensive lineman for Jesuit. Had a great year so far. Just one of the better high school offensive linemen in the area, and just had a great year so far. So I'm gonna be keeping an eye on him. I wanted to give him a shout out. But on a great season so far, and really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do in the playoffs against some of these teams coming up. I think a lot of it's going to rely on him. He's got to keep that defensive end out of the backfield. He's done a great job all year. I think it was one of the keys that they were able to beat Armwood was because of this kid. And so I think he is going to be a really big key component to what Jesuit can do in the postseason.
He's been the anchor for that line, and Jesuit has progressively gotten better since the offensive line has gelled. All right, Matt, your quarterback versus mine, and I'm going to let you take the first stab at it. Go.
Yeah, man, I think I'm going to go with Jesuits, Will Griffin. I think the way that their team is set up, the way they've really rallied together, he's going to be fun to watch. He's thrown for 2,200 yards this season. He has 18 touchdowns. But even around him is, the coaching has been incredible for Jesuit. You have a great little running game. You got receivers that can go out for the pass. You have the offensive line, like Derek mentioned. So yeah, I'm excited to see Will Griffin get out there in the playoffs and, make his little run for it. I know he's got a lot on his shoulders. He has a lot to prove. He's a sophomore. So he does have a couple years to make it happen. When I talked to some of the Jesuit guys in the earlier season, that was the thing. They're like, we're a really young team. Some of their top players are sophomores and freshmen. And so their big thing was in maybe 2 years they'll get up into the states and have like that type of team. But I think it came quicker for them, and I think that this could be a year. The way they adjust, we talked about how they took out Bishop Verot, and then the undefeated team. They took out Tech. They took out Armwood, all undefeated, great teams. And Jesuit found a way to beat them. And, you'd have to give a lot of the credit to the coaching to be able to instruct the kids on what position and which way the game's going to play. When we watched Jesuit against Armwood, Willie was able to connect with there was the Willie Will group. They were able to connect. I think Will had 4 touchdowns that game. But then when they played Tech, it was really interesting to see how they adjusted everything, and they had more of a running game. And you had Thurman, the Notre Dame commit. I want to say he had 2 touchdowns, but they really, they 3 touchdowns. Okay. So I'm excited to see Jesuit make their playoff run. Will Griffin, when you look at his size and his skill set, he is definitely one of the top quarterbacks in the area. I think the way his team is set up, a lot of those guys were part of the team when they won the state championship a couple years ago. They have a little bit of insight. They know they've been able to play out of county teams, so they kind of know what to experience when they get out of the county. It's going to be interesting to see. Jesuit's always a strong team, so I'm going to go with I think will be the guy that I'm going to try to watch through Jesuit's playoff run.
I'm a fan of Mr. Griffin, and I'll tell you, it is not for the reasons some may think. Even though he's a 4-star, depending on whose ranking system that you're looking at, I think I like him the most of how he manages the game. Whenever they however much they put on him, he's able to manage it. That may be a lot in one game. It may be a little in another game. However, whatever they need from him, he's capable of making it happen. And I know when you start talking quarterbacks and you start saying managing the game, it makes it sound like a kid's not talented. That's not the case. In this space, I'm talking about the way that he can manipulate defenses, how he keeps the chains moving, how he doesn't lose possessions for them, how he'll make certain plays, which are big plays that could be a 5-yard run on 3rd down, or it could be a 40-yard pass on 2nd down. He's able to manage the game as a young quarterback and progressively eliminate young mistakes. That's how you become a big-time player, okay? So I like yours. Now, I raised you one, and I'm going to Pasco County. I've been on this kind of like Pasco County thing all podcast long. So I'm staying in Pasco County, and I'm going at Zephyr Hills High School with Brendan Colella. And now, what a lot of folks don't realize that last season, Brendan was very, very good. He threw for 1,700 yards last season. He's already at 1,600 yards this season. 19 TDs. Last year, he was 26 TDs in 12 games. This year, he's 19 TD passes in 9 games. I think that they can make a run. And if they make a run, opposite of Will Griffin, I think it's going to have to be on Brendan's shoulders. I think he's going to have big boy games and make big boy throws and have big boy type moments. And here's the thing about it. I think he can. Actually, I know he can. Zephyr Hills has a chance to make a run. And I'm telling you right now, no pressure, Brendan, but this is my respect for your coaching staff and you as a player. I think he can do some really good things and impress some folks in the postseason. And a sign of big-time players is how they progress and how they play postseason. I'm a fan of his, and I think he's going to make some things happen and open up some eyes. So my quarterback versus yours, I know you think you're going to win this argument. I'm going with mine, and Derek's just sitting in the middle, just playing the both of us with his offensive lineman. His is most important anyways. So those are our impact players who we expect to have a very good run in the postseason.
Derek, so I know you like the linemen, but if you had to pick a QB, who would be the QB you want to watch?
He's got to pick between ours. Put him in the hot seat. Okay. He's got to pick between ours.
Well, I mean, I'll be straight up honest with you. I mean, I have not broken down any Zephyr Hills films, so I can't tell you much about Brandon. So there, I guess there's your answer right there. I've broken down Jesuit. Yep. Well, I mean, it's, so I don't know if the audience understands this, but, I spend a lot of time deep diving into specific teams, and it's all over the state of Florida and actually in Jersey as well on a big video project. So I get these deep dives into specific teams, but that means I can't really I'm spread thin when it comes to some of the other teams. So sometimes I don't say a whole lot because I haven't seen the teams yet. But I'll break down Zephyr Hills and I'll get a feel for them. But I don't want to say too much without having sat down and watched a lot of game film on them. So I don't know. Maybe that's not the right answer, but that's the honest answer.
It's definitely the wrong answer because he's supposed to say Brendan because I said it. And you're my guy. You're not there. We have a close relationship than you and Matt. So don't start that crap. You're on my side.
No, it's all good. But no, I mean, it's, it is what it is. I do need to get a look at more Pasco, but quite honestly, I've been overwhelmed right now in Miami-Dade and Jacksonville. I'm doing a lot of stuff out of Duval. And when Pasco County coaches want to send in their games, I'd be more than happy to break it down and we'll feature the kids on the site and all that good stuff. But until then, I'm just deep diving into some of these teams and, we'll feature a kid in a little bit out of First Coast High School, for example, that I think is going to be one of the top 25 players and way under the radar. But that's the kind of stuff that I've been up to right now. And but anyway, so maybe next week I'll talk a little Zephyr Hills.
Derek, he gave me the kind of like a back end view of some of the projects he's been working on, and he really does. He gets in there. He has over 1,000 kids on a spreadsheet. He goes through all their films and he makes sure that he gets them recruited.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and quite honestly, the focus a lot of time is on the lower division programs. And quite honestly, the Pasco County coaches need to get in touch because what happens is when recruiters come into Tampa, they all come into Tampa, all right? So now after they're in Tampa for 2-3 days, they got to figure out if they're going to go south into Manatee, Sarasota. Are they going to go east into Polk County? Are they going to come north into Pasco? So while they all come to Hillsboro, now they got to figure out, are they going north, south, east, or west? Are they going into Pinellas? So I think it would benefit a lot of the Pasco coaches if they got their film in a timely manner, and we'll get this stuff out and try to entice these coaches to come up to the area. And so anyway, we'll see. All right, so back to the film room. Now I'm going to introduce you to same school. Again, going deep dive on some of these big-time schools and staying in the Jacksonville area. First Coast High School. I want to introduce you to a big-time 2025 cornerback prospect. Listed 6'1", cornerback out of First Coast. No one's on this kid right now. That's about to change. We're going to watch Jakari Maddox. Man, Preston, you played the position right here. Oh, man, this kid's good. Long arms, plays taller than me. I mean, he's listed 6'1". He is a big-bodied kid. Very, very good in coverage. Love what this kid does on film. No one's on this kid right now. That is changing this week. He will hit the radar, reaching out to a bunch of schools on him. And, man, cover corner. Watch this. Watch the ball skills, right? Oh, look at that. Oh, this kid's good, Preston. Another pick. This is Jakari Maddox, First Coast, junior cornerback, 2025 class. Watch him play the run right here. Look at that. Down near the goal line. Yep. Watch him right here. Sees it. Uh-oh. Let's get after it. Yeah. Long corners. Man. Premium. Yep. Another pick. It's against Reebok. Real good feet for his size too. Just big fan. Broke down the whole season, put this together. Just very impressed. Again, First Coast always loaded. This is just one of those young kids amongst others, but this kid really jumped out. College coaches watching this, get after him. He is a big-time recruit. No one's on him right now. Hit me up. I'll get you contact information, whatever you need.
All right, so we have time now for the super early MVP / player of the year candidates. We'll start tossing out some names because it could shift because the playoffs are going to matter. And, your better players have to make plays in the postseason, right? However, there's a lot of guys in the pot that we can start considering for player of the year candidates. And the guys that we have listed, I'm looking at right now, man, it's an impressive 3 right now, and things could really shift. However, I'm gonna toss the ball. I'm gonna punt to Matt first. All right, Matt, just give me one guy that stands out who's definitely going to be on your possible player of the year rating.
Absolutely. And this is a hard decision. There's a lot of excellent players out there. But I'm going to go with Armwood Hawks, Gerard Pringle. Just looking at some of his stats, but I've got to witness him play in person many, many times for the last 3 years. But this year, man, he is just killing it out there. He has over 1,400 yards. He has 23 touchdowns for the season. But what I like best about him is that kid is tough, man. And I saw him against Steinbrenner. One of the safeties came running around and just, man, it was one of the hardest hits I think I've seen all season. And Pringle, I was like, I wasn't sure if he was going to get back up. Jumps right back up, shakes it off, gets right back on the line and runs the ball again. And I was just mind blown. I even messaged him the next day. I was like, bro, are you okay? Because you got, that was a big hit. And he's like, I'm good. At the Tech game, I don't know if you remember, and I don't think it was intentional, but one of the linemen accidentally grabbed his face mask. And I mean, I saw that. I have it on video, and his head literally twists around his whole body. Like, his head is backwards on the video. And he sat there for a second, got his head right, jumped right back up, and started pounding the ball again. And there's something about how tough that kid is. And now seeing the way he's just been really, really exploding on the field. And if you think about, you see these hard games they played. Jesuit was one of their toughest games. We looked at film. He looked like he had I think he had a turnover, which put Jesuit in a really great position to essentially win the game. But even that game, he had maybe 3 touchdowns. I mean, the kid has just went off every single game. And so I was also looking back, and Max Preps actually has him as player of the game about 6 times this year. It's not just me noticing him. I think a lot of people are really, really seeing him play. He's only a junior. He's got a whole nother season next year to really, really, really put it on for the city. I'm excited to see some more offers come in for him. But if I had to pick somebody right now, it's very hard, man. There's a lot of great players. I have 5 on the top of my head I can think of right now, but I'm going to go ahead and go with Gerard Pringle as my player of the year.
Hard to argue. But Derek, argue against it. Make your case for your guy.
Well, I mean, there's different ways that you can look at this question. The way that I kind of look at this question is that if I had to pick one player to build a team around, I think there's a player in the county that actually, when you put on the field, he turns into 3 players. I think Greg Smith at Sumner. I think he is an elite quarterback, but when you put him on defense, you're getting 2 in 1. So you're getting an offensive player and you're getting a defensive player. But the unique thing about Greg is his ability to turn into a linebacker immediately. He's sitting back there at that safety spot, but as soon as he sees the run, he's able to come up and become truly an elite type of linebacker prospect too. So I don't know. When I'm thinking of building a team, you got to be strong at the quarterback spot. I think Greg brings that. And then just to get a multi-dimensional type of defensive player also in the secondary that turns into a linebacker. I mean, his range is amazing, but it's not just sideline to sideline range. He has the ability to come up and read the run and make plays at the line of scrimmage. I think you're getting three guys in one player. So, I mean, that's just kind of the way that I look at this question, that you've asked. But, it's easy to Luke Knight at Wiregrass and what he's done stats wise, he probably has a really good chance to actually be the player of the year in the area. So I think there's a lot of guys to choose from. But if I had to start a team, man, I'm telling you right now, Greg might be my guy because I think you're getting three guys in one player, and he's elite at all three of those positions.
And here's why I like both of your recommendations is because, and your suggestions or whatever you want to call it, is because I'm a firm believer that much of the success of those teams has a large percentage of how those players have played for their teams. Arnwood at 8-1. Would Arnwood be 8-1 without Pringle and playing as good? Hard to say, right? But it's very easy to come up with the answer. Hey, they're playing really well because they got somebody that can tote that rock and can go for 200 yards a game. And Pringle, and you use Jesuit, Matt. He had 2 turnovers against Jesuit, right? Just uncharacteristic. But then you bounce back the game after and the game after and the game after. And he keeps consistently churning out numbers and moving the chains. And then Derek talks about Greg, and Greg goes away for a game and a half, and they lose. And then he comes back, and they continue to win by 40 points. So, how impactful are these players for their teams? And those two guys is an easy argument to make. So I'm a fan of both of those. I'm gonna make it a little more difficult and going on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm going to Michael McClinton over at Okoye. He is a 2026, 6 foot, 225 pound, 2026 defensive end. And one number really jumps out. He's got 31 sacks on the season. 31 sacks on the season. And not against bums, all right? On their schedule, he's playing Apopka, Wekiva. He's playing Winter Park. He's playing West Orange. He's playing Edgewater. He's playing Dr. Phillips. And he's producing multiple TFLs and sacks in all of those ball games. And for a defense end who primary job is to hold that edge, contain, and then get after the quarterback, to do that 31 times in 8 games just jumps off the chart. Now, he'll probably get the third vote out of these 3 players because they're not as successful on the field. They're about 500 as a team. And you got to have an impact for wins. Player of the year that's going to produce wins. However, 31 to be leading the state with 31 sacks over Okoye, who's a fairly new school, is impressive to me. So 3 guys, you guys fans, hey, put your comments in the comments. But we gave you some good ones. And Derek and Matt, just to add on to your arguments, we keep talking about those players because every week they're making plays. And, it's no reason to talk about bums. These 2 guys that you guys are talking about are fantastic players, and every single game they're making plays.
And Derek, when you talked about Greg, about how he runs up and becomes that linebacker, man, I watch film on him every week, I feel like, and I didn't really know how to articulate that, but you're absolutely right, man. He is a safety, and he will see that run, and he's smart because he's a QB too, so he already understands, like, right when he just knows, and he can run up and he makes a big play. But the way he runs up behind that line, it's impressive. And actually, it's funny you brought that up because I noticed that, but I just wasn't really sure how to put that. I just was thinking that was like a really good safety play. But now that you say that linebacker, he really does run up there and becomes that guy and just gets those tackles.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when you have a guy like that, especially at the high school level, it's as if Sumner is playing with 12 men on the field every time he's on the field because he can cover from sideline to sideline. He has an understanding of the passing game because he plays quarterback. And as soon as he sees run, it's as if he lined up right at that linebacker spot. And it is as if they have 12 men on the field every single time he's on the field. And then when they have the ball on offense, he becomes a dynamic two-way threat with his arm and his legs. It's really a great combination and to watch. But yeah, he's like having 12 guys on the field when you're on offense too, because you've got to almost spy him. You've got to account for his ability to break containment in the pocket. And so, yeah, he is a unique weapon, no doubt. All right, so a player to upgrade. Well, there's many, but this team's fresh on my mind. I just finished doing a full season breakdown on First Coast High School out of Jacksonville. This team is traditionally loaded with talent at all times. They've got a quarterback committed to Western Kentucky right now. And they've got a number of wide receiver prospects that have been putting up big numbers all year. Thomas Jackson is one of them. And then they've got some underclassmen as well. But I just found a kid late on game film. He started the early part of the year I'm going to play his highlight in the background right here. Started the year out on kick return and just steadily started making play after play and started to get some action at wide receiver late in the year and really has kind of hit the scene out of nowhere. No one's on this kid yet. He has really good grades too, and I'm going to be reaching out to a bunch of schools. Lower division schools come down to Florida for just what you're seeing here is speed on film, and this kid has it. And again, they've got other kids, other wide receivers on their team that are going to be higher end type of players. But man, this kid really has been impressive. I mean, you can see him with a tough catch right there, stays on his feet, well balanced, and just has really good speed. But just really excited about it. LaShawn Evans is the kid's name. And here he is on a kick return. Just one of the plays that really kind of jumped out early on. And but yeah, every week you and I both receive calls and emails. Preston, Derek, you got any speed down there? Any wideouts? And here we go. Lower division programs just jump all over this kid, LaShawn Evans, First Coast High School up in Jacksonville. And we'll kind of finish watching a little bit of this right here. Any college coaches watching this, I'm more than happy to reach out to me. I'll provide you coaches' contact information or information on LaShawn. Make sure you can get in touch with him. But yeah, there you go. A little sleeper wide receiver, player to upgrade.
Favorite time of the segment is the mailbag. It's when we hear from the viewers. They get to shout out, ask questions, whatever it is. Just keep engaged. We always have a bunch that drop into the mailbag, and a few good ones hit the BCP Instagram story answer about their mailbag. So we're going to go right down the list. Here go number one of the three best. And I'm going to shoot this one to you, Matt, first. The statement is, all Riverview area football teams, minus Sumner, are extremely overrated because of their schedule. React to that.
All right. So I totally understand the question where you're coming from, and what you have to understand, especially in the Tampa market, you have 38 teams, and so they break it down in different tiers. And so that top tier, you see the Jesuits, the Techs, the Armwoods, the Whartons, the Plants. And then you have the next tier, and that's when you're starting to see, the Sumners, top of that tier, and they're almost getting to that next tier. And then you have the Durants, the Riverviews, East Bays. So there's different tiers, and what happens is every couple of years they look at the wins and the losses of these teams, and they start basically making their schedule a little bit more competitive. And so what I'm thinking is that you're really starting to, Sumner is a very new school, so they only have 3 years, and they made it to the playoffs last year. This year they're going to go to the playoffs. So they've had 2 years of success. So now when they start thinking about their future schedules, they're going to get their schedules to be a little bit harder. Same thing with East Bay. They've had 2 good years of success. Their schedule is going to start getting a little bit harder for them. Same thing with Riverview, and same thing with Durant. We saw it with Gaither. Gaither had a couple good years. All of a sudden, they get thrown in the gauntlet, and so I think that's all really what it comes down to. But as far as the teams are playing, half the teams are good. They'll each play a really, really, maybe 2 or 3 really hard teams to really test their skill. But the other 5 to 6 teams are going to be some of the lower tier teams that, they only maybe won 2 or 3 games in the whole season. So the question, in Riverview, their schedule are a lot lighter, but that's just because they haven't had the success as your Techs and the Armwoods and all those guys. So now that you've seen them win these last couple of years, expect their schedule to get harder and expect them to have a more competitive team.
That's a really good answer, bro. Like you kind of laid it out really definitive, but didn't hammer them too much. I like it. I like how you finessed that. That was a good one, Matt. That was a good one. All right. So question number 2, or a statement. This is a statement. I'll take this one. Northeast beats Largo this week. All right. My first reaction when I saw this question come across, I was like, Northeast may struggle a little bit, but quote unquote, in the words of the great Derek Williams, I did a deep dive, all right, and was kind of on the fence about this game. The best thing about this game is their common opponents, all right? They've got 6 common opponents. Northeast is 5-1 versus their common opponents. Largo is 6-0. However, the team that Northeast lost to, Clearwater, 21-18, 3-point swing in that game. That Clearwater-Largo game came down to the very end with Largo winning by 1 point. So in that common opponent, which is Clearwater, both teams had to fight to the very end. And now you're looking at, hey, this could be a ball game. Even then you start looking at their stats, you start getting a dive, you're trying to find, okay, where could the advantage be for either team? One team passes the ball a little bit more efficiently. Another team runs the ball a little more efficiently. So offensively, they kind of equalize each other. They kind of balance each other out. Total yards per game is not too far off, with Largo at 289 per game versus Northeast 256 per game, right? And then you're looking at sacks per game. Who's going to defend a little bit better? Right now, Largo with a slim advantage with 2 sacks per game, Northeast with 1. So like, okay, something has to give. And I'm just going to toss this out. I think that a slim advantage to Northeast, a very slim advantage to Northeast for one reason and one reason only, is that Northeast is going to be at home. Now, what could possibly happen is Largo has Northeast and they smack on them. That could happen too. Or Northeast gets them at home and they really have an impression showing and smack on Largo. All these things are possible. But the only advantage I'm going with is that Northeast is at home. Will they beat Largo? Don't know. Do they have a good chance of beating Largo? I think they have a very fair shot at beating Largo in a very entertaining game.
What's on the line with this? I mean, I haven't even looked. Are there playoff situations on the line here? Or is it?
No, all playoff situations are done. This is just to end the season. Gotcha. All district champs have been named. So, and obviously they put that district game before the last week of the season so they can start looking at the playoff scenarios. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think this is for bragging rights. And it's good that Northeast is having some success. They had a few down years, a lot of coaching changes. So, and Largo's been super consistent with theirs, with Coach Marcus over there. So this seems fun on the surface, Derek.
Yep. No doubt.
All right, and D-Dub, I'm tossing this one at you.
Yep.
You looked at plenty of Durant film, and there's no other person better to give an answer for this one. But here's the question. Thoughts on Emmanuel Lee for Durant? And for folks who don't know about Emmanuel Lee, he's about to break the 1,000-yard mark for the season coming up on Friday. So Durant's success, some of that is going towards Emmanuel Lee, how he's been running the ball. So Derek, what are your thoughts on this young man from Durant?
Well, I mean, we hit on him after in the Sumner game when they played Sumner, and all right. It's hard to explain. Sometimes it takes a little bit for things to finally click, and you could tell in that Sumner game the progression was obvious. I mean, this kid came out and ran like he was possessed in that game. I mean, he had a great game and really dominated. And I didn't see that early on. So, and we had mentioned that. I said, man, this kid had a breakout game against Sumner. And go ahead. I mean, how's he finished out the year, right? I mean, how did he do last Friday? Put up a pretty good game.
So last Friday, he went for 213 against, at one point, a 7-0 Riverview team, all right? Yep. So 212 carries, 213 yards, and 1 rushing TD. No TD that game, but 213 yards, averaging 17 yards per rush.
Yep. No, it seemed the progression. Again, this is why I'm a big fan of watching game film, because you can see progression on tape just at week after week after week, and you could see things on game film that a lot of times you don't see on highlights because the kids aren't putting the highlights together correctly and all that good. And that's not in his case. I'm just saying in general. But I could see his progression, and it really jumped out after that Sumner game. So him closing out the year strong is no surprise, and he's a junior, correct? I think he's poised, man. I mean, you get these kids like come out of nowhere. It's like, whoa, who's this kid? You know, he'll hit 1,300 yards at week 7 next year. You know what I'm saying? So something like that would not surprise me. And he'll just be one of the kids that we'll be talking about next year. But Emmanuel, there's no doubt, definitely comes as no surprise that his progression was obvious. Watching it happen in that Sumner game, I think, was the spark to his year. And so he's closed out strong, and yeah, heck of a player, and had a great year.
So sorry for the confusion, but he's a 2024, so he's a senior.
Okay.
But let me add on to your argument and just back it up with a few numbers. So you said, hey, I like his progression.
Yep.
He got better. The Sumner game kind of clicked, right? So Here's me backing you up. Versus Middleton, 33 rushing yards, 3 carries. Bloomingdale, 17 carries for 97 yards. Plant City, 16 carries for 80 yards. Versus Leonard, 12 carries for 16 yards. And then we hit Sumner and things change. 22 carries, 148 yards. The following game, 103 yards. The following game, 140 yards. In a grind versus Gaither, 83 yards. And then finishes last week with 213 yards. So you called it. You called it. Hey, I saw him get better. All the game film you had, I see him get better. I see him getting better. And the numbers kind of back you up very easily.
Yep. No, and you get these kids that are late bloomers, and the fact that he's a senior, then like he's the kind of kid, like right now the phone's dinging and ringing and text. Coaches are looking for kids, and I'm not talking about the big time programs and all that. I'm talking about the 600-700 lower division programs that are scouring the state trying to find kids. And those are the kids, those late bloomers that they end up going to college somewhere. And it's like, man, how do we get this kid from Florida on our roster? And, you know, next thing you know, he's getting it done. So no, I'll be really aggressive in pushing him out there and making sure some of the lower division programs out there are aware that this kid's sitting down here and just kind of a late progression type of situation. I just had a wide receiver out of First Coast, same type of thing. Broke down the entire season. Game 1, kickoff team. Game 2, kick return. Game 3, all of a sudden this kid busts 1 or 2 here or there. Then he starts getting into the mix at wide receiver. And this kid's a senior, 5'10" wide receiver with speed. And I'm sitting here like, man. And all of a sudden, game 7, game 8, game 10. And I mean, I'm telling you, last week's game alone, he'll have college programs to offer him at the lower division level. And you can just see the progression take place. It's so obvious on game film. But yeah, no, that's another example right there. And yeah, just it does not come as a surprise the way he finished out the year at all. And that Sumner game is exactly when it happened. And I even told you off the radar what the term is what happened. And in that game, that's exactly what happened. And all of a sudden, that kid finished the year strong. So yeah, college coaches watching this, make sure to check him out. He's a heck of a player.
Hey, for Matt, who's always on the sideline with Flex Report, and for Derek, who's always in the booth with Quick Cut, I slide in where I can, wherever I need to fit in. We appreciate everybody tuning in to BCP Podcast. Please drop your comments in the comment section, and we'll keep rolling.
Hey, Preston.
Yeah, man.
I think Emmanuel is a 25, actually.
Well, they got it wrong on their max. That'd be great if he is.
Wherever it's at, I think he's a 25, but I could be wrong. We'll see.